welcome.
Well, hey folks, welcome back to the Political Matrix News. I'm Scott Miller, and this is my partner Greg Fink. We've been, the days of the Biden news cycle are long since over. Well, news cycle more like a snooze cycle because there wasn't anything
Yes.
very entertaining going on during there, and certainly nothing worth paying attention to, and certainly nothing. I mean, you needed to pay attention to it, but not for any good reason, not for a reason where you're expecting something good to happen, like now.
Yeah.
um, Greg and I have been working on politics for decades, and boy, are things just getting more and more exciting by the day, in my opinion. And I know Greg shares that
Oh,
shares
yeah.
that belief. We're going to start off the show today with a discussion of Chuck Schumer's appearance on The View. Who could imagine that they would be a friendly news service for him? But boy,
Oh,
were they
yeah.
serving up the softballs.
Yes, they were. That's all they have. We're going to take a look at the video here real quick.
Before we do that, though, before we take a look at the video, I want to read you so right out of Wikipedia is hit or miss for a lot of things, but for certain academic type things like definitions of, say, logical fallacies, I mean that they have they're pretty solidly grounded. So I want to read you this one: a straw man fallacy is the informal fallacy of refuting an argument different from the one actually under discussion, while not recognizing or acknowledging the distinction. Okay. And I'll give you an example just real quick because this is perfect. This is right in the definition. Quoting an opponent's words out of context, for example, using quotations that misrepresent the opponent's intention. So, with that in mind, throw the clip. So, I mean, is there any other way to look at that? Because Musk has proposed quotes to things like Social Security. He ain't talking about the benefits. He's talking about the staff that execute those benefits. And he's talking about replacing a lot of these guys. I have a background in computer programming, and one of the jokes that we would throw around was, I could replace you with a shell script, which is just a little teeny bit of code that I could replace your entire function with. And
Exactly.
that's the mindset of Elon Musk. We have computers in the government right now. You and I have talked about this before, that are using technology, even if the hardware isn't from the '90s, the software is from the '90s, and it is just ancient software.
Well, we also, in watching this video of Schumer, we see what ancient software looks like in real time. I mean, he's not just a straw man, he's a digital straw man. I mean, the whole thing here it's pathetic. I mean, all he has to say is that Trump made a good decision. The bill was good, not bad.
Oh, heaven forbid that. And the thing is he knows good and well that that's not going to happen.
Ah,
But
yeah,
it
it's
doesn't
not.
scare enough of his voters. It doesn't legitimize enough of their opposition if he admits to things like that. And that's his
Right.
entire motive here is just to
Yeah.
make sure that he can, do something, throw something against the wall, and hopefully it'll stick.
And I will say one thing about the bill, which a lot of conservatives, I think, are a little irritated about, is that there's a $300 billion of additional spending in the bill. And so some of the people are like, we're doing all this stuff with Doge here, with getting rid of the spending. So why are we adding more to it? But hey, at least it's only 300 billion. That's a good cut compared to usual.
Well, hold on, man. There's a $300 million or $1 billion appropriation.
Right.
It ain't spent yet.
That's very true. And it might not get spent. I mean,
Because this is how deals in government get made. I'll vote for your thing if you vote for my thing, and so
exactly.
you make the deal to get the continuing resolution passed. But that only gets the money to the executive branch, and the executive branch is demonstrating pretty solidly that they are allergic to spending money.
Exactly. And so hopefully that works out in our favor, the people's favor, and the money doesn't get spent that way. Because I mean, we do have to work on the hypocrisy issues here. I mean, I know it's really good for Republicans to do what they're doing, but we got to step it up with all of them. And Rand Paul is correct. We got to quit spending. You have to start cutting and cutting and cutting in every which way, a lot more so than we have ever thought about cutting before. Because now we actually have a president executive who'll sign off on it. So we haven't had that before to this degree, and now we do. So let's take full advantage of returning the money back to the people, returning everything back to the people.
Yeah, I saw a post today on X from Tammy Duckworth, who is who's what I call the DEI entry to to the Air Force fighter world, because she was apparently an Air Force fighter pilot, but that was clearly part of the Biden quota system or something, or the Obama quota system or something like that, because that woman, there's no way that you can speak the way that she speaks and be a legitimate soldier. I mean, it's just ridiculous, the things she was talking about. She's trying to play that vet card in a way that that suggests that simply being a veteran should protect you from ever losing your job, and that is not the case.
No,
Yeah.
I'm a veteran. There are lots of people who should not be in the veteran services. No offense to guys, but there's lots of people that should be. There also are lots of people that should not be. And in the military, there's lots of people that should have been Article 15 and reprimanded and kicked out and court-martialed because they were not in the right place or for the right reasons to serve our country. They're there to serve their own needs and to do different things and nefarious things and learn different types of military skills to advance those types of ideas in the future. And sometimes you have a few lawbreakers every now and then. It's like, people don't realize the military and the veteran services are just like every other occupational area, just like medical, just like police, just like administrative, just like bookkeeping, accounting, computer science. Every not all of them are 100% pure. Everybody has their lemons.
Just because you're a veteran doesn't mean that you should have that as your fallback protection to never get fired. If you're the veteran that's sitting there all day playing solitaire, that veteran card really ain't gonna work.
Or like I saw this week, if you're a veteran, it has 3 screens: one screen of work, one screen of hearts, one screen of solitaire, then a minimized pinball. You might be thinking that you might not be there too much longer. And if you are, then that's part of the freaking problem. And these guys are making $100,000 a year, and
Shockingly.
yes, no, the people I'm talking about, who I actually visually saw, are making $100,000 a year, and it's just, I mean, it's bad, it's weird, and I understand there are a lot of good, hardworking people in the veteran services. There are
Certainly
lots
there are.
in the VA. I mean, I love the VA services. I mean, where you're at in Pensacola is one of the worst ones in the nation. Where I'm at in Gainesville is actually in Jacksonville, in this area over here, some of the best in the nation. And I mean, it went from me having to wait for lines when I was living in Pensacola. I'd have to wait 4 or 5 months to get an appointment, to where I have to wait 3 or 4 days now.
My girlfriend is a veteran, and she's actually kind of going through that and experiencing that.
Right.
She has some substantial health problems right now, and she is we had kind of a behind the scenes conversation with some of the administration over there, and she was terrified that they were going to put her on some kind of a list where you have to be escorted everywhere with with the VA police. And I'm like, man, that's not how it's done.
Really.
And all I did was go in and talk to him and say, look, is this really the administrative environment that you guys want to be behaving this way in, or you want to kind of, calm down, pay attention, and listen
Right.
to us and get the help that she deserves?
Exactly.
Miraculously, procedures went from a month away to a couple of days away, and she
That's
has some.
very
I
good.
mean, and it's not. These are serious procedures for a serious health condition. So yeah,
Right.
it's not just the VA just when they're good they're glorious. When they're bad, they are an epic failure.
Yeah, but we are blessed. Since you and I both live in Florida here, Florida has the highest number of veterans in the nation. People don't realize that. Northwest Florida is the number one area for veterans, and North Central Florida, where I live at, is second in the nation for veterans. And so the VA services we have should be, top of the heap, and I mean, it's like paramount. But they are over here. They're getting better from what I hear over in Pensacola. But yeah, they do need a VA hospital over there. They're going to need to get one of those eventually over there, because right now they're using Keesler, I think, in Biloxi, and that one's run down. And so, I mean, the equipment in that place is run down very badly at this moment. Hasn't had enough funding and everything to keep it all up to date. Because a lot of people from Keesler are now coming over here to Gainesville and to Jacksonville.
I still maintain we need to flip the entire thing into community care and be done with it. Turn it just turn the whole thing in there, turn
As
it
long as
into
it's
an insurance.
guaranteed service, because people who die or who work to die for their country or serve their country want to make sure there's a guarantee there.
I get that, but I mean, so, and I mean more. I mean, TRICARE works great.
I actually found out TRICARE does not work with the VA over here.
I get that. That's
I
what
didn't know that until last week.
I understand that. What I'm saying is, I mean, we've had TRICARE for a long time. Why don't we just absorb all the veterans back into TRICARE?
And
It
also,
already exists.
exactly, most of them have Medicare A and B and C by that point anyway. So they have Medicare plus TRICARE. So it's like my father. My father has VA, Medicare, TRICARE, and I think one other insurance. So he's pretty insurance up. I mean, that being said, that's how it's all getting better with a lot of all the waste and everything being cut out. And basically what it needs, all the waste that we see there, the money needs to be returned back to the healthcare and to the medical care and the services that are being used, because right now we're on waiting lists and long waiting lists for this and that. And if they're on a waiting list because they have the funding for it, if they got rid of all that waste and all the people who are not working, they would be able to create the funding, or free up the funding that's already there and just redirect it toward serving the patients.
Well, all of the
The
cost.
thought.
Well, I shouldn't say that. The majority of the cost in the VA is in the people that work there.
Right.
And the number, and you take the number of people that work there and divide it by the number of people that they serve, and that ratio versus private medical facilities of any kind is enormous. I mean, the VA just takes so many more people to service the same number of people that is just ridiculous, and there's no justification for it. Absolutely none.
Well, I've been told that the VA here is much more woke than, and as far as the wokeness factor goes. And so a big part of trying to get the VA streamlined is to get all the DEI and all that type of garbage and everything else that's bottlenecking up the entire personnel and operations process out of the way, and start streamlining it more. So hopefully, I mean, Musk is doing everything he can. I mean, what do you say right now? A federal judge is trying to stop him from doing anything else with U.S. aid. A federal judge in Maryland, where all the U.S. aid stuff is started, or I guess headquartered at, right? Majority of it is.
No, no. USAID itself, I believe, is headquartered in the district. The problem is that all of the NGOs that that USAID funds are located in Maryland, and I don't know this to be. I'm not even going to suggest this as a suggestion that this judge is doing anything corrupt, but there's a pretty good chance he's on the board. Judges get on boards of nonprofits all the time. By the way, NGOs nonprofits are pretty much the same thing. There may be a couple of variations here, but they're the same thing. And sometimes they get federal funding and stuff like that. And not even that this judge thinks that his NGO is going to get cut, but it's just one of those things that you're always, as you're a board member for something like this, you're always worried that your funding is going to dry up, and watching someone else's funding dry up just makes you scared that yours is going to dry up. So I think that he has. Let's be charitable here and just say that I think it's more just kind of an internal concern of his own that kind of colors his decision making here, because this is ridiculous. To suggest that the president can't shut down an organization that was started by an executive order is ridiculous.
Yeah, but then you actually mentioned her before the show that the governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, is actually a very big proponent of doing Doge-like activities in his own state at a state level. And in fact, I mean, he's doing everything he can to separate the federal from the state, federal control out of his state government as much as possible. And for those who don't know, Wes Warren is actually one of the leading possibilities for a presidential choice here for 2028 for the Democrat Party. He's an African American uh, governor of Maryland. He's actually more looked at as moderate. He's not a far left knee jerk reactionary like everybody else on the far left side is. He's more like the
Yeah,
Shapiro.
Newsom.
Exactly. He's more like Shapiro. Well, Newsom, I think, is more of a chameleon. I think Newsom might become a Republican at the end of the day. I mean,
Yeah, well,
he has zero
that wouldn't
spine,
surprise me.
zero conscience, and basically he'll just stick his finger in the air and do whatever he can. But Wes Moore is actually, from what I've read about him, he's very moderate. He's, I think, very supportive of school choice and that type of educational approach, which I think is very important to have. But I do feel bad for the Democrat Party not having any real leadership besides Shapiro and well, I guess Wes Moore. I guess they're trying to keep Pete Buttigieg up there, but Pete has only done a wonderful bang up job in this little town in Indiana where he was the mayor of. It wasn't even the biggest town in Indiana, was it?
For the
Uh,
bigger towns. What was it,
yeah, I
Bloomington?
can't remember which town it was.
I don't
Ah,
remember either.
brain fart. But
I
he is
mean,
also
I
the
gotta be honest with you. It's hard for me to name a town in Indiana to begin with, other than Indiana and
yeah.
Bloomington and Indianapolis.
Well, yeah, I
That's
mean,
about the only ones.
exactly. And so he is a guy in the Midwest. That's wonderful. That's great. That's powerful. That's needed for Democrats to have a leadership type there. But he also did a bang up job with the DOT, having more plane crashes and boat crashes and train crashes and everything else under his leadership that he handed off to our Scott Duffy here, who's shaking his head like, where the hell is all the, yeah, well, where's everybody? I
Oh
mean,
my God! It isn't even it isn't even any of the cities in Indiana like we named. It's South Bend.
South Bend, that's a pretty little town.
Yeah, population of 100,000 people.
Yeah.
The city.
Get ready to lead.
He was the mayor of a town with 103,000 people in it. And then he got DEI'd into Secretary of Transportation. And now they think he's ready for president?
Get
Really?
ready for prime time. And then you got Shapiro, who actually, Shapiro's a pretty good governor in Pennsylvania. He crosses the line. He works with everybody.
Well,
He's not,
Shapiro,
he's not a hater.
honestly, when Biden was on his way out, Shapiro was the one I was concerned about specifically because I figured that you get that guy in there, he could have given Trump a
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
good run for his money. I'm not saying that Trump would have lost, but it would have been a far more competitive race.
It would have been. It probably would have been a few more electoral votes closer. Although, I mean, the way that Midwest area votes, I mean, Pennsylvania and Michigan, they all vote together, so it could have been pretty scary. But
Yeah, it would have made it a
it's
lot
not
more
now.
interesting.
It never
Yeah,
happened.
yeah, I know, right?
Never happened because Democrats don't think ahead. But then again, it goes back to the whole Democrat philosophy that they are, I think, good at fundraising, not at winning.
Yeah, they only care about fundraising, and as far
Yeah.
as winning goes, the only winning that they care about is stacking the government with enough people that'll fund enough outlets for money. To be fair, this NGO thing is pretty new as far as the degree to which it's used. It has been the favorite funding source for actually not even funding. What's the right word for it? Where you pay someone to do something that they're, graft. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
This is their favorite now.
I mean, I will say K Street and all the lobbyists and everything have been very busy for the last 30 or 40 years, but nobody, with the Heritage Foundation and stuff like that, but nobody to this degree. Nobody's where it's going to be like a $20 billion on the last day of the presidency, just stash over here or $2 billion over there. It was like, $100,000 here, maybe a million there, maybe 5 million. We were not in the billion. We were not in 10 and 11 digit numbers. I mean,
Well,
it's extreme right now.
this NGO thing kind of grew out of a lot of local government kind of payoff stuff the way that they used to do it. And I'll tell you what because so I had a family member who used to be an inspector for the DOT. And what he would do, or he didn't do anything, untoward. Actually, oh, they didn't like him very much, but he wound up getting the same. Yeah. So he was an inspector. All right. Now, so as a senior inspector, you go through your entire career. He went 30 years there, and he got to the end, and that meant that he had actually trained everyone. Once he retired, everyone that was left there, the people that were doing his job, were trained by him. And so he was immediately hired by a consultant to be the guy that comes back and says, yes, this is what the state meant to buy. And the way that they would do it was they would go there and talk to the people that he had trained and said, don't you remember this and don't you remember that? So my guy is a jerk. He'd look at a concrete beam that was a quarter-inch out of spec and tell him, no, stamp rejected on it in a heartbeat, build another $300,000 beam. But he's not everyone. And so when you can go your career and then know that when you get your little cushy job, that the people that you trained are going to be looking at what you're doing, knowing that they're going to be able to walk to the same job as long as they don't alienate the contractors. Well, that's how stuff goes. So this concept of paying people later for what they're doing now, and then being able to take that little handshake deal, is how this whole NGO thing was born. Now they don't even have to wait till they retire. They just wait till they leave office, jump on the right board, and boom, off they
Yeah,
go.
it's kind of the Clinton Foundation was the first precursor of this. Yeah, everybody just cashed in with all the Clinton cash right after that. And then Bush, everybody everybody in the Bush regime was already pretty well off, so there was no real big golden parachutes with any NGOs with them. Cheney had his Halliburton family and everything else, and the Bushes were the Bushes.
Yeah,
So there's nothing really there. Then Obama came along, and that's when the NGOs just went crazy.
See, the corrupt Republicans make money by steering projects over to or supporting and steering contracts for their friends that are in this business so that they'll get more and more of the jobs. Democrats set up these NGOs, and sometimes they're on the NGOs, on the boards of these NGOs while they're being funded. They just will agree not to vote on anything that their NGO is going to get funded on.
Yeah, I
But
remember.
their guy in the next room, their suite mate or the guy in the next office will do it in a heartbeat. So they kind of that this is amplifying pork barrel politics to the extreme to pay off your friends and family.
The only real big Republican scandal with this type of stuff was Tom DeLay and Jack Abramoff, and it was stuff with Disney or not Disney, the Indian tribes and casinos. Which
Yeah. I think it's
nowadays
something like
looks
that.
like, are you kidding me? We actually had a hearing over this. I mean, it's Boy Scout stuff. It was stuff that Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi were looking for and begging for anything to grab back in 2005 so they could take over the House in 2006. And that was just anything they could do to go after the hammer delay and go after anybody. I think Dick Armey with Freedom Works. He was also a senator or a congressman in Texas. Dick Armey was. And so they were trying to use Freedom Works as a tool, the Republican tool or the Republican NGO, I guess, to do all this corruptive stuff, which it wasn't doing anything corrupt at all. It was just a nonprofit, grassroots organizing, campaign operative uh, group, and they did really, really good work. Although, and they actually lasted up until like 2 or 3 years ago. They finally shut down a few years ago. They did really good work on showing up all the corruption and everything else in the Democrat Party and basically teaching people how to do grassroots campaigning on a county level and a city level. And Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer were grabbing at straws, and they're using that as their big, you know, beat 'em up doll and everything else back in the day. And now they're so guilty. I mean, Pelosi is like a billionaire now.
That's the thing.
The hypocrisy.
You know,
Huge.
The thing that's just, I really just cannot wrap my head around how we can look at these politicians who have never done anything in their lives, never had any job in their lives other than as an elected official, and they go from having like $100,000 or $200,000 net worth here and there to millions of dollars, billions of dollars, presidents included. The Clinton Foundation should. My God, we already uncovered the fact that they used money that was sent to an NGO to pay for Chelsea Clinton's wedding and buy her a house. Why in the hell that isn't going to wind up with criminal charges, or at the very least some kind of clawback, is beyond me.
Yeah. I mean, and so the Bidens were the latest on the Biden Inc. and the Biden NGOs took it to a whole new level. I mean, the level that they are at, and now Hunter came out, I guess, last week, say he's broke because I guess he ran through all the money. Yeah, so it's easy to run through. It's hard to save, but it's
Wait a minute. Are you telling me that a crack addict with no actual marketable skills can't hold on to money?
no, he can't. Go
Go
figure.
figure.
I never would have thought that being wait a second. It does make sense, actually. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry for my confusion there. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, crackheads can't hold on to money. And so, I mean, the whole thing here is that he's broke and the Biden family's broke and all their, all their connections are all gone, gone, gone. If I believe that, I got a bridge in Colorado once. Say, it goes all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Yeah, it's in Colorado and Nebraska. And so, yeah, it's not just Arizona. And so, but I mean, it's ridiculous. And they took it to a whole new level. And now, and this takes us to where we're at now here with Doge. Doge is trying to uncover all this stuff and to stop it and to reverse action. People kept on thinking that Trump was an isolationist whenever he was against, because he's against military action. Now he's out there killing the Houthis and he's involved in almost every damn country there is in the modern universe right now. I'm trying to make sure that they work with us on the terrorists and we work with them. He's doing nothing what the definition of isolationism is. But they're going after him. They're going after the family, saying the family's all corrupt. When the family has lost more money than any elected family has ever lost by being elected, and they've done more to help people out of their hearts and out of their wallets and out of their accounts and everything else than anybody else has been elected. So I'm a little confused on what the definition of any of the Democrats' verbiage is. Basically, I don't think they have any definitions. I think it's pretty much all show, all lies, and basically it's all just fan out rhetoric that does nothing but slow down the process of government of us shrinking the government and enlarging the nest egg for the people.
Well, I mean, they're clearly terrified that they're going to lose their influence. They're going to lose, their revenue. And actually, the influence is more important because when you need people to do things with you, when you can't directly pass a law or do something to get someone to do something for you, the only other thing that you can do is give them some money, through this little slush fund. It's so funny that Schumer used the word slush fund because I'm like, what on earth is USAID if not a slush fund?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge slush fund. It's more or less a CIA front for all the different operatives and all the different acts that they're doing and or not doing. I mean, there's a really good Sam Kinison stand-up routine about feeding people in Ethiopia and feeding people in the desert. And he said, we don't need to be bringing people food. We need to be bringing them U-Hauls and be taking them to where they grow food, where food exists. Because a little note, food doesn't grow in the desert. And that's one thing that he kept on saying in his stand-up routine. See, this is sand. Sand. It's there's no food here. You live in the desert. You need to go where there's food. I mean, and it's kind of, people keep on saying about what Trump is doing with Gaza and what Trump is doing with Ukraine. He's in there trying to tell people how to live and try to manipulate their lifestyles or whatever. No, what Trump is doing is by telling the people in Gaza to go somewhere else is he's trying to he's actually trying to help the Palestinians who are not controlled by Hamas have a better life as well. because you cannot live in that kind of rubble like they have there. Same thing with Ukraine. You cannot live in that type of rubble. You have to remove yourself from that area so it can be rebuilt and taken care of. I mean, there's a point here to where we keep trying to take care of people, and when they live in areas that are not suitable for them to live. We're not trying to change their life. We're not trying to change their entire. We're not trying to, what do they call it, we're not trying to commit some sort of a cultural genocide or anything like that. What we're trying to do is better their lives. God damn it! I mean, seriously. I mean, the people in Palestine are living a horrible life, but they're controlled by Hamas and Hezbollah, and people need to start looking at their lives and their future without Hamas and Hezbollah being in the process. That government needs to be gone.
I have a slightly harsher take on this, and it's simply if you are not objecting to something, then you are agreeing with it. And when the Palestinians are over there, and then they're not objecting to Hamas, in any way. You don't have to object to something that's going to get you killed, but you can start objecting on a low level to things that just kind of erode their power base, and then and then you can get rid of them. But these people, there have been a number of journalists that have gone into Palestine and talked to random people on the street who completely agreed with Hamas. And they weren't in Hamas, they were just random folks, and they agreed with kill all the Jews, and they thought it was fine. They thought January 6th was great. And they're all fine. So my take on it is, show me some Palestinians that don't agree with murder, and I'll support those Palestinians.
Exactly.
All the rest of them can take a freaking hike.
I mean, the October 7th issue that happened, which is almost a year and a half now away, 18 months ago, and we still have not.
That's in January 6th.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Okay. What happened 18 months ago? We still have not received all the hostages back yet, and the ones that we received some of them are dead that we are now receiving, and the tragedy and the horrific nature of how they treated these people is just beyond me. I mean, it's sickening, and the whole fact that people are still putting up with it.
I'll tell you right now, I will predict right now, today, Tuesday, March 18th, that there are no more live hostages, and that's why they stopped giving them back.
Right, and they actually,
and they may no longer have the bodies, and or the bodies that they do have show such despicable mutilation, they don't want to show those either.
And it goes back to this whole protesting here in America, here at Columbia. Was it that everybody's upset about this guy who, Marco Rubio, who are a wonderful senator for Florida, now Secretary of State, he told that guy to go ahead and get out. And
down the road, son.
They got a problem with that. I mean, guys, it really threw me for a loop when I saw this here Jewish group who was protesting Jews. And it's so bizarre. I mean, guys, get on the team. If you're Jewish, support the Jews, okay? That would be attacking the Jewish people, the Jewish state. I have no idea what the hell you're thinking. I mean, hey, great. It's the First Amendment. Do whatever you want. But buy a brain, okay? And buy a conscience, okay? And I do mean that sincerely, period. I mean, there's zero reason at all you should be supporting anything if you're a Jewish person.
It's right up there with poor people that support communism, frankly, poor people that support the Democrats, because nobody has made more poor people in this country than the Democratic Party. When you advocate for, when you're opposed to the nuclear family, and look, when I say nuclear family, I personally would like for it to be a mother and a father, but I'm not going to get all bent out of shape if it's a mother and a mother or a father and a father, only because you need two parents to, so that when a kid has a need, you can at least have one parent that is off at work making money for the family, and one that is laser focused on the needs of those kids. And they can swap places time to time. I'm not saying that anyone's going to be locked into a particular role, but there's no way that you can make the case that two parents is not better than one parent. And when you decimate the family, you literally create poverty. And no one's created poverty like the Democrats.
I mean, between the abortion issue and everything else, and the whole idea that the father is not relevant, and a two parent system is not relevant, and that basically, the entire nuclear family is a waste of time and a joke. It's being made fun of and laugh at. That is the reason why. I mean, we are 40th out of the 40 industrialized nations in education.
Let me
So
tell you something. More than anything else, I love Dave Chappelle's take on that when he said, okay, well, if you have, if you want abortion rights, well, then I should be able to, to not pay for the child if I don't want to. Because if you have the right to murder them, the least I can do is abandon them.
yeah, it's a very harsh way of saying it. Yes, but it's Dave Chappelle's mannerism. In fact, let's go ahead and show the clip of that real quick so we can put it in context real quick. Yes, that's Dave Chappelle at Dave Chappelle's best. Yeah,
He definitely says it better than me. I'll grant
yeah.
you that.
But
And the thing is that I just want to say this. The point the point he makes is that he's not really advocating for abandoning children. He's just saying that you can't you can't have one without supporting the other. And the only reason they don't support the other is because they know that mothers are less in a position to make the money they need to support the whole family if they've got to be a mother and a breadwinner.
exactly. I mean, it's people don't see how much art actually does reflect a lot of life that we see out here. I mean, actually, you and I both being artists, we actually are definitions of that, of how it reflects the political realities of life. I mean, my brother, he's an extreme liberal, but he's a hell of a cartoonist, and he's a hell of a musician. He plays 40 instruments, and so I mean, it's the whole point here is that when we talk about these things on the show, and we talk about all the different parts of the Democrat Party, they keep grabbing for the media side to justify what they're doing. But right now, a lot of the media is actually justifiably going to the center and to the right. And I mean, you have a lot of actors who are. You got Mark Wahlberg now, who was doing Marky Mark underwear commercials 30 years ago, and now he's doing Pray Up commercials, the Hallow commercials about praying today. And it's like his movies went from having f bombs and sex in all of his movies like crazy, and now they're family movies where a curse word hasn't even been mentioned in the last 3 or 4 movies that he created. And so, I mean, it's really gone a big difference. A lot of swings and everything else in the media have happened. And I think that a lot of them see that the reflection and everything else of the culture and the community, how it's changing and how the left is just losing their minds. That's the reason why you see Chuck Schumer and everybody else with their hair on fire, because they're grasping at anything to bring them back to where they have some sort of control, but they're losing all types of control, period. They can't control anybody through the media anymore like they used to.
Well, am I mistaken? Is Wahlberg? I know Gibson is one of the people, and I think Wahlberg is one of them, and I know there's a couple of other conservative actors. Kurt Russell, I believe, is one of them also in Hollywood that they're joining together to form their own studio, so that conservative actors don't get shut out simply for being conservative.
I think Chris Pratt's one of them.
I think
Chris
he
Pratt's
is. Yeah.
one. Robert Downey Jr. is, I think, joining the group. And
It's,
so I mean, you have a lot of the Avengers actually are kind of conservatives, which from what I was told, anything I don't know them personally to justify or verify that. Maybe somebody watching this podcast might know them. They can check it out.
we know people that know. We know people that know
Yeah,
them.
we do know people that know them though. Yeah, Kirk Cameron's one of them as well. Kirk Cameron, Candace Cameron. They're very big in that. In fact, my cousins actually work with them, and so yeah, they're very big in trying to bring culture together, and that's one thing that whenever Republicans were on the outside of it, we actually didn't think is important. We used to blow off the Hollywood people and say nobody ever listens to them, but now with podcasts being in play, they do. I mean, we have a whole different approach of how they communicate to people, not just through a movie.
Well, in my view, they started. They have, we've had this, frankly, DEI period, the Obama period and the Biden period, where, some reason known only to God, people have believed that because someone is well spoken, that they're correct. And that is absolutely not the case. Just because you can you can read a script and you can look at a teleprompter and fake sincerity doesn't mean that the words coming out of your mouth have any resemblance to the truth.
Like Kelsey Grammer. Kelsey is a strong conservative, but he had to play liberal roles, and he hated, I think, a lot of liberal roles he had to play. I mean, he is a reformed alcoholic, reformed cocaine addicts, and everything else, and he still had to play roles where he is drinking and around all the types of behavior and everything. And but if you listen to a lot of what Kelsey Grammer's saying now, I mean, he learned a lot from it. He came through all of it, and he's always been a strong conservative in the media movement. And so, I mean, it's very interesting how it's
My
all turning
view,
around.
my view of most liberals are that they tend to be damaged people who are terrified that people are going to spot spot their trauma and judge them for it, and so they are terrified of that. Famous people are not only not any smarter than the average guy on the street, they tend to be insulated from real life so much that they're less smart than just the random. I can walk up on the street and find people with far better information than any of these celebrities on TV.
Yeah. Exactly, and a lot of them were coming out of the closets from the fires, and that's actually what drove a lot of them from the closet is the liberal policies that control the way they live, the way they acted, the way they drove, the way they ate, everything in California, with all the different regulations, all the different rules, and everything started falling apart the way it did. It kind of took all the clothes off the emperor very well, and it really shed a lot of people. They're tired of taking the bait. Mel Gibson is one of the huge ones that's really out there, and Sylvester Stallone, I think, is another one of them. And so, but I mean, it's a whole cultural change now. I mean, even when you see rappers and I mean Snoop Dogg and some people like that, they're out there hanging out with Kid Rock, and they're all just switching over to the right side, and it's gonna be interesting. The whole next election cycle is gonna be very interesting.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm looking forward to it.
It's gonna be fun. But real quick, I think we have one thing to talk about here in Florida, and the governor. I think he finally, his wife is gonna probably drop out of the governor's race, hopefully soon. Supposed to be next this week or next week.
Generally speaking, I like Ron DeSantis' policies. His implementation of some of them have been a little troubling for me. But generally, I'm kind of like, well, I would have done it that way, but let's go. But to prop your wife up there, I mean, not since the days of Wallace or who was the governor in Louisiana? Really, Edwin Edwards. Edwin Edwards. I think he tried to do something like that too, and it, it never works out. I mean,
No,
voters want to vote for the guy that they're doing. They don't like voting for proxies. And if he wanted Casey to be the next governor, he should have started 4 years before he became governor, getting her involved in some things that would elevate her profile.
but
But when you throw her in there at the last minute like he's doing, it makes it look like you're just making her a proxy for you, and people don't like that.
and now I guess Rick Scott, the senator of Florida, has now endorsed Byron Donalds. It looks like for the next governor of Florida. So with Donald Trump endorsing him and Rick Scott endorsing him, I think the Agriculture Secretary Simpson is not running
Well,
now.
yeah. They say that, but first he's running, now he's not running, maybe he is running. But even when they say that he is running, they don't say he's running. People just start talking about him running, and it kind of happens organically. So it's a
Run for
long way to
CFO.
election day.
He could run for CFO. Or he could run for re-election for ag commissioner.
I think he's termed out ag commissioner.
He might be. I do know they're looking at Joe Gruters as being the front runner to the CFO seat.
Well, that would be the reason why they would put him in the as CFO, because they absolutely are not. Joe Gruters is on the outs in Florida politics right now. So I mean, he's got his seat, he's in there, but the people behind the curtains are not enthusiastic about Joe Gruters being governor.
Now, just to let everybody know, we have a new pack that we are bringing out to start talking about corruption and voter fraud. And we're starting in Florida first. It's called Florida True. So yeah, talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, Florida True, it's not a PAC as much as it is just a nonprofit. That because a PAC would insinuate that we were supporting elections, and we're not going to support elections. What we're going to do is we're going to use it to investigate elections, and to use our combined 60 years worth of election experience to look at odd things like an entire apartment building full of people that get registered to vote on a day, and none of these people you go and knock on the doors, and these people all claim that no habla inglés, and you're going to tell me that you somehow convinced a whole building of people that no habla inglés to go and vote on an election, to switch their registration on election day and then go vote.
Yeah, we're also going to look at see how we can implement e-verify in the Florida political system. I do know that e-verify is more or less a use for employees, like, contracts and everything. However, I think in order for us to verify that these are not just motor voter registrations, these are actual citizens, United States citizens, and we need to verify that, because I do think that a lot of the people that are getting underneath the rug here are people who are not citizens, who are just more or less, new college students, or basically transfers coming in as college students into our wonderful country. People might be here on a student visa, they still can't vote. And so just because you're here on a student visa doesn't mean you can vote. Now, granted, ACLU might think you can. Now, the liberals would love for you to be able to vote. It doesn't mean it's true, and it doesn't mean it's factual. And unless they have the due diligence at a lot of these election offices, which most of them are not funded enough to have, they need more funding to have more due diligence. They're not able to look into and investigate these things properly to see if these people are real, actual United States citizen voters or not. And we are sensing, smelling, and tasting that the case is they're not. And we are. That's one thing that Florida True is going to be investigating a lot of.
Right, and I want to beat that that apartment horse to death one more time, and say that you know let's accept the premise that 100% of the building is Latin, and 100% of the building doesn't speak English, and 100% of them agreed on election day to switch their registration. There is no way on God's green earth that you're going to get that many people to 100% vote, because people just aren't built that way. It wouldn't matter if they were all English speakers and had been here for 150 years.
Yeah.
The fact is that you're not going to get an entire building worth of registered voters to vote. So, like 100% of the people in the building, first off, all of them changed their registration on that day. All of them showed up to vote. Do not, most of the time, if you get them to change their registration, they're just doing it so you'll get it the hell out of their face to begin with. So they're not going to show up. All of a sudden they do. So
that's what we call ballot harvesting, guys, for those y'all who don't know this. And what happened is, I live here in Gainesville, Florida, and what Scott's talking about is a brand new apartment building that just got popped up. And so all these new county to county changes happened. And then one building is mainly all one country, and the other building is 3 different countries represented. And basically, if you look at the statistics, nearly 100% of that building registered to vote and changed their vote and voted on election day. Really? These are 17 and 18-year-old kids, 19-year-old kids. And you herded them and corralled them to do that. Do you even know what they were doing? Most of them didn't even speak English, or had a hard trouble speaking English.
If you're going to lie to me, at least do me have the respect to make it a credible lie. Because if these voters were spread out over an even demographic or geographic area, it'd be one thing. But 100% of the building, really? This is what we need Florida True for. Florida True. This is the kind of thing that we want to investigate. We want to go and compel these supervisors of elections to produce the documents that they are hoarding to keep the truth out of the public light.
Whenever, according to the state of Florida and Tallahassee, had 27,000 voters purged out of the electoral county system. I know we've talked about this before, but according to the people at the elections office, they have never heard of any purge. In fact, the numbers now are almost back to nearly being identical to what they were before the purge. Because just let the dust settle a little bit, let the smoke settle. The election's over. Who are these people? Did they vote? Did they not vote? Does it really matter? And do you really know who really voted? Now we have a city council race here coming up here in Newberry, and a lot of the city council races are actually counting the votes in front of the people. Now I know it's archaic and it's backwards and it's old school, but it is exactly the way it should be done. And I mean, I know that it's on a larger scale, but you know what? Basically what we all have to do, and this is what we all do in Florida, I think in every other state, because I think New York and California is probably the same way, in most other states, is that we all go vote, we go home, we go have dinner, we go to bed, and we wake up, and we just trust. We just trust the 12 or 13 people that work in that office are telling us exactly the truth and telling us exactly what happened. And we just trust that.
It's funny. They set up these canvassing boards, and the canvassing boards are supposed to be the ones that protect the integrity of the election because they're there watching the votes be counted. The problem is by the time the canvassing board gets to look at the votes, look at the ballots at all, fraud's already happened. So I'm not suggesting that canvassing boards aren't an important part of the process. We definitely got to have them, but that they're not the silver bullet that guarantees election integrity.
Now, I would like anybody who's watching this video, please tell me how many canvassing boards that they are aware of. Hopefully, they're watching this, probably involved in elections anyway. So, how many canvassing boards are you aware of where the people who are on the ballot are actually in the room on the canvassing board, watching them bring the ballots in and count the ballots? How many of them? How many boards? You won't find any that are doing it legally. First of all, is the answer. And secondly, they were given an NDA to sign to say that they were not there. Yes.
It's beyond it's beyond comprehension that they do that. They have people who are on the ballot in the room watching, and this is for early voting. This isn't even election night. This was early voting.
This is and vote by mail. It's also vote by mail. This is done a month and a half before the election, 6 weeks before election day.
Not even supposed to count the ballots.
Oh, they're not supposed to count them until the night of the election. And we're in Florida. And this is a very blue county with really hardly any blue lifestyle, really. It's just beyond, it's weird.
It's absolutely ridiculous. You have people that are on the ballot. Why do they need an NDA to get an NDA? First of all, if you signed an NDA like that, start blabbing right now because they cannot enforce that NDA. That they're basically trying to hold you to an NDA to violate the law. If your NDA is in violation of criminal statutes, it can't be enforced, and that's what
they're actually inviting candidates to come watch them do the process.
Their favorite candidates.
Their favorite candidates, and not inviting other ones.
Exactly.
But hey, that's the things that's our new project that we are talking about here in the Political Matrix News, and that's one of the new projects that we have going on here in Florida. After we get running with Florida, we got, I guess, 40 some other states here to work on, but I think Florida will probably keep us busy here for a while. But we got a lot of stuff going on here in Florida. Hell, I mean, we both live in like Scott said, we've both been doing campaigns here for 30 years each. We've seen several thousand ballots in people's trunks, and then wherever they find them, it's weird because they didn't find them a week or two later, right? They found them on election night. They could have counted them. They could have counted them before they got certified. They said, "Well, what are we going to do with these?" I'm like, "Well, they didn't do nothing with them. They didn't count them. They didn't bring them in. They didn't verify them. They didn't see their duplicates. They didn't do anything. They just tossed them out because it's just a vote.
It's just a vote. Whatever.
Who cares? We got the votes we wanted. We announced the winners. We don't want any egg in our face. Shut the fuck up.
And honestly, on a personal note, this is how important votes are. I had a friend at one time whose grandparents had voted in every single election since they became eligible to vote. They were in their 90s, and they got to the precinct, and for some reason there was some kind of a glitch that their record was, they weren't going to be able to vote. and she was in tears because they were in tears. And I was
Right.
able to go get a provisional ballot, recorded for them, and then ultimately get it counted. But that's, there are people who count that sacred. And frankly, I think we all should. I wish we all had that attitude. Thankfully, I've never had to fight to get my vote counted, but I'm happy to fight to get everyone's vote counted that is who can legally cast a vote.
And to follow that up, go ahead.
And I do want to point thing out. This friend's a Democrat. Her grandparents were Democrats, or lifelong Democrats. I'm a lifelong Republican. I support the Republican Party, but I fought passionately to make sure that that Democrat vote got counted because it's important. It really is.
I mean, and you and I were both involved in a race that was settled by 3 votes. I think there's 4 or 5 races that were actually 3 races,
We've been
5 votes or less. But
we've been involved. We've been involved in several elections that were settled by less than 20 or 30 votes.
And there's a big difference, and people don't realize. I mean, it was like the good guys and the bad guys. It really was. I mean, we had one guy who had been arrested for illegal hunting and arrested for trespassing and then arms issues and gun issues. And we had another guy who was a very good, businessman, and it was a very big sign of a tale of two cities, really. And an election was that close, and there's a lot of elections that are that close. And it was also an open primary, so it was, we had MPAs voting, Democrats voting, and this was actually the first time a Republican had been endorsed by the Democratic Party, and he actually won by 3 votes. And so, and his name was Gene Valentino, for full disclosure, as a county commissioner race in Escambia County in 2006 when that was. I was doing all the opera research for this. Yeah, I was doing all the opera research for that fun time. And it was a lot of fun, but it was a very, very close race. And then we had other races that were settled by 25 votes or 30 votes. My dad, he won his first race by like 80 votes, and he lost his second race by like 40 votes. And so I mean, it's all a number of numbers, and everything does count.
And we're not talking about elections with like hundreds of votes in them. These are elections with tens of thousands of votes in them that come right down to the wire.
Exactly. So I mean, it's very important to do. That's the reason why election integrity is such a very important issue that everybody seems to have forgotten to talk about now. They need to get back to that page. How important it really is.
That's okay. We'll be talking about Florida True a lot more in the future. So just keep your eye out for it. You'll start to see. You'll start to see some promotion of it so that we can kind of start rounding up our crew of election warriors who are committed as we are to making sure that the vote that you count gets cast the way that you vote, the way you marked it.
Exactly. Because every vote needs to count, but only one time. Exactly. But that being said, I think we've exhausted enough about the election issue here tonight. I think it's going to be a very fun week this week.
It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be so interesting because we have a lot coming out now with Doge and we have several judges now attacking the veracity of everything they're doing. So we're going to see how the court system, how everything plays out. I think it's going to be interesting to see them have a lot of egg on their face.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting week. Everyone pay attention, buckle up. It's going to be a great ride, and we're going to be there to dissect and discuss, exactly what things are from an elections perspective. I'm Scott Miller, and this is my partner, Greg Fink, and this is the Political Matrix News.
All right.